Hi, this is a recording of the presentation to parents on vertical group teaching. It's happening in January 2026. So to begin with, we went back to the very start in terms of our curriculum development at the school. I became head teacher in 2020 and developed a curriculum that was bespoke to children at the school. This is developed over time, incorporating things like sticky knowledge and progression and more detailed revisiting of knowledge that has been a requirement of the school over the last 4 to 5 years. As you can see, Rosenshine's principles in action as well as a pedagogy that we follow, which is very much about only moving on when knowledge is secure, and so we can build those blocks and move forward and actually gain more understanding and better skills going forward. We're in a place now where Ofsted, as you're aware, we had a very positive Ofsted report. One of the things I did pick up on was even though the curriculum was extremely powerful, there was it was so broad that the advice was to narrow that curriculum down slightly, and that allowed us to find ways to dig a little bit deeper for children to understand more and remember more. With the switch to vertical grouping, then it's gone hand in hand. I was already developing something, but with vertical grouping, it has helped with it. So I just want to take you through how the curriculum is shaping moving forward. First of all, what is vertical group teaching? Vertical group teaching means bringing children from different year groups together, allowing teachers to focus on where each child is in their learning journey in terms of stage rather than just what age they are. Now, we do this already in a number of subjects, most notably reading and phonics at the school, which has proved extremely effective. So, for example, the last number of years we've been well above national in our attainment for phonics and reading, and there is a really powerful argument for teaching at stage and not just what the age of the child is. So bringing those groups together, mixed age groupings of year one and two. Another benefit of this is years one and two children are very close in terms of their stage of development and working together. They collaborate well together anyway, and it's very, as I said, with the phonics, but other areas of the school work together already. But it's a good age to mix children. Teaching through shared concepts and skills. Learning activities match to individual readiness and challenge. That goes back to what I was saying about our pedagogy of only moving on when we are ready to do so. And collaborative learning that builds confidence, empathy, and leadership. So bringing this into a method of learning, always like to have a GTS way, or something that everybody buys into, and that's teachers, parents, children. And I've been thinking hard about this and thinking about the stages of learning that the children would go through in a vertical group setting. I picked on three, and there is a fourth that's just been developed very recently, and I'll go through that towards the end. But surface knowledge. We would like to see that surface knowledge as building strong foundation and key skills, learning the core knowledge securely. And that's so important because in the past, when it used to be levels many years ago, the reason that schools came away from levels is that race to what you would think would be the top. But on that race, if you miss out lots of stages of learning and knowledge, then you topple with like a house of cards. So it's about slowing that learning down, just making sure we're secure before we move on. So surface knowledge is something we're looking at in terms of introducing into a topic and a piece of work. The deeper knowledge that progresses on from that, so making connections, explaining, understanding, and applying knowledge to new situations, and adventurer knowledge, just move my video there, going beyond exploring ideas independently, solving problems, and thinking creatively. Now, with those stages of knowledge, it's very much nothing's changed there in the sense of what we're looking for, because it's very much matched towards the working towards the expected, the greater depth, what you may have heard of, or in foundation, the emerging typical. But it gives us something to really teach on and an ethos of how we're going to teach children, how we're going to make sure there's no lag in learning. Everybody's being supported where they need to be, but crucially as well, which is another concern of parents, is that children are still being stretched. So is that challenge and stretch is specifically there, but also specifically there is that teaching to the wider group of children, but also that support for the lower ability within that subject. And I did talk a lot about in the meeting that we don't pigeonhole children. So a child might be an excellent writer, but when we get to science, they haven't got that science inquiry. So it's always on subject per lesson. This is a very fluid movement in terms of where your child may sit in that teaching ideal. So I thought it'd be really, really useful to look at something that is real instead of just talking, hypothesizing about things. It's looking at something that actually is being planned already. So I've started planning the history curriculum, and that's virtually done now. So I'll take you through what it would look like for your child. Very important to note that curriculum symbols, terminology, language, structure of lessons, all of that will not change. So we want to, if there is a change like vertical group, it's very important we keep a lot of constants as well. We've got to keep a lot of things that stay the same for the children to make sure they're happy, relaxed, and well-being is the most important priority of all of this, that your child still remains happy at school, because if they're happy, they will learn. And that's what we've got now. We don't want to, jeopardize that at all. So with the national curriculum for history, nothing changes there because obviously we follow the national curriculum and pupils are taught these four main objectives in Key Stage 1 history. So that's changes within living memory where appropriate. These should be used to reveal aspects of change in national life. Events beyond living memory that are significant nationally or globally. The lives of significant individuals in the past who have contributed to national and international achievements, and significant historical events, people and places in their own locality. Now, we're looking at the years that have been before. I'm jumping everywhere here, sorry. So looking at how we've taught the history topic. So we've looked at Victorians in year 1 and 2, and you can see from the images here, we have done things like transport, looking at significant people like Florence Nightingale. And this has been over 2 years, and this is what it has looked like. So in green, you got the Victorians, this was year 1, the Victorians introduction, the Victorian seaside, Victorian transport, Victorian toys. Then as you go into year 2, the following year, same objectives again, but different focus, Florence Nightingale and Mary Seacole. And then and now impact of change, which you get when the children become more critical in their thinking. Now, obviously, if you're going to put that all into one vertical setting that you're going to spiral around, which I will talk about in a minute, that spiral curriculum, this is the biggest thing that I know it's hard to get your head around and how it's going to work. But spiral curriculum revisits the same focus, but very much at a different stage of learning. If we're going to do this in one topic, there's no way you can teach all of that to children. The cognitive load would be so high. We've done a lot of work on reducing cognitive load in the way we teach, but that includes not too much content as well. We've learned from the past that things like the Victorian seaside is too abstract for the children. And Victorian toys, even though it was accessible, that's something that we always look to see, is there anything we could drop down to EYFS Foundation as well? And we feel that that's something that could come out of this. So if we took those two away, you're left with these 4 key strands of the topic, but know that there's no missing objectives. So for example, Victorian transport, there's changes within living memory. Florence Nightingale and Mary Seacole, that's the lives of significant individuals. And then and now, the impact of change, that does link to the locality and historical events, people and places. So we haven't lost any learning. That was a question I did receive a number of emails about. We're worried that there's going to be gaps in learning, and there's not. We cannot have any gaps in learning because we've got to follow the national curriculum. And that's key, because the national curriculum is for Key Stage 1. It's year 1 and year 2, and it's how we split that. So this is another way of doing that. There was one missing from that. That was the events beyond living memory, but that is picked up in a different topic called Fire or London's Burning, and that is taught in year 2 currently. But as you can see, if that was already 2 topics here, we are covering all of those objectives that we need to. So Key Stage 1 history, the revolutionary Victorians. What would one strand of that look like? So if we took Victorian transport, and that's the changes within the living memory, this is what those different stages of learning would look like. So at a surface level, you would have children finding out more about transport, like horse and carriage, steam train, early bicycles, handling image, artifacts, sorting, discussion, additional support there for those children to be able to start to grasp that things were different in the past. So transport has evolved over time. The main focus would remain as trains, and that's what it is this year in year 1. And that's our WOW event. So a train journey on a real life train journey, very exciting for children. We won't lose that because we'll put it on a 2 year cycle. So for example, what happens now, the train is a focus in year one, year two. With Florence Nightingale, we have History off the Page coming and do a Victorian Day. That would be in the second year of this. So there'll be always a shift in terms of wellness, but the children will not miss out on any of those. So going back to the surface knowledge, the main focus is trains. It's very practical, hands-on learning and simple recording of knowledge. The deeper knowledge, same focus, Victorian transport, compare past and present transport, discuss and explain how technology improved travel over time. So you can see there's a real shift of understanding now. So if the knowledge is secured at a surface level, your child could access the deeper and knowledge stage. One misconception of this is that, okay, so year one would start at the surface level, year two would come at the deeper. That's not. If we're going, and I will come to this when I look at the planning of this. It's very crucial to understand that there's lots of AFL, that's assessment for learning, going on in school. So our teachers are very skilled in terms of finding out where your child is at. And once again, I refer to what I said earlier. It's not just a pigeonhole of your child's good at writing, so they're going to be good at history. That's not how it works. So even if your child finds it difficult to record things, express what they're thinking, their actual understanding of history might be very good. So through speaking and listening, skill questioning, we may find out that year one very quickly is into the deeper knowledge or even beyond. So it is a very fluid way of teaching. And actually, I feel this is going to be a very exciting time because it removes barriers. It allows for real targeted specific support in all subjects. This is non-core, but in core as well, English and maths. There'll be a bit more streaming, but that's for another day. But in terms of the non-core, there's that specific teaching of children that may be finding it difficult to grasp things. There's that real central core of deeper knowledge of let's make sure these children are deepening their knowledge in the quality first teaching that's being given. But then crucially, what I'm coming on to next is the explorer knowledge, so adventurer knowledge, sorry. And this is where the children explore. So they're being adventurous, they've got those real key surface level, deeper level, and they can start being a bit more critical in their thinking. Now, once again, this could be a year one if there's accelerated understanding, because we talk a lot about cultural capital. So, in terms of going on to this investigating cause and effect, how did steam power change industry, travel, and leisure? Now, we may have a child in year one whose family, might be in an industry that is linked to this. So there's that natural interest. There's that is like going back to the Great Fire of London, which I'll talk about in my planning coming in a bit of the presentation. You might have a family that has family in London, and you've gone down to London, you've done where did the fire start, and there's lots of understanding and interest about it. The cultural capital of that learning is much higher than a child that's never been to London or even heard of it. So once again, we've got to get out of that's a level. This is a year one. This is a year two. So you're more likely to get year twos adventure and knowledge because you do need that secure learning of the surface and the deeper, but a child could accelerate through. The crucial thing to know about all of the stages of learning for Victorian transport, the main focus stays the same, which is trains. But it does open up into, if we're at the adventure and knowledge stage of learning, then we do start to pick up on things like industry, toys, and Victorian seaside as well. So as that broadness starts to, that child's able to be more broad now, and deep in their learning as well. To make it happen, this is something that's happening right now, and we've always valued the cross-curricular links. Our strongest learning happens when there is clear cross-curricular links happening organically, as it were. But to be able to fit everything in, to make the whole curriculum work, we've got to be really specific where these links are. And in most areas we're just tweaking that now. So, for example, for Victorian transport, we would ensure that in other lessons of the curriculum, they run alongside. So, for example, as a super scientist for our science curriculum, we'll be looking at suitability of materials. And that happens anyway in the curriculum, but if we bring it into this slot where children are learning about Victorian transport, then they also in DT build a bridge for a train. So in science, that's a perfect opportunity to look at the suitability of materials. In English, going back to those three stages I just showed you, like children sorting simple pictures, writing captions, when comparing and contrasting, explanation text, describe and compare. There's lots of English links, writing links that come through this topic as well. Mention the DET, design technology, designing and testing structures, which would be a bridge for a train. Maths, obviously measuring materials and structures, and that could be covered there. And geography, looking at locality study, OS map symbols, which is all in the geography curriculum, but can be brought into this, looking at train stations and the locality of Wolverton and Milton Keynes train station and so on, where the school is. So as you can see, by linking all of those subjects together, we really have done some powerful learning just through Victorian transport. So to try and explain, I'm very much a visual learner. So I was trying to think, when I designed the curriculum in 2020, I used the Lorax, and the children watched it, and we'd be doing the same with this. But the Lorax is all about something great can grow from something small. So like that's why we had children planting acorns to make oak trees, which we were successful on. Quite a few got two growing in the field now. So it's that idea that what we do now, even though it seems small, it can get greater. Now, the spiral curriculum is something that goes round and round. We're digging deeper, but if we're going round the spiral and picking up knowledge, that's the best way to understand it. And I just remember a scene out of the Polar Express where the train, lovely scene, train's going up the mountain on its way to North Pole, I think it is. Yeah, and it's on their journey. And I thought that's a really good analogy of what we're trying to achieve here. Because if we imagined that, so a child's learning journey, like the Polar Express, making its way up Snow Mountain, the train doesn't rush straight to the top. So that comes straight into what I was saying in terms of it's not that race of learning because a child will fall down at some point. So it's that spiraling to the top. It circles the mountain, it climbs a little higher with each turn. Every time it comes around again, it's at a higher level, stronger and better equipped for the journey ahead. And that's exactly what you want your children to be. But if that's planned carefully through the curriculum, then that progression will work. To take each stage of it, so the train would be your child's learning journey as it's going around the mountain. We're revisiting familiar scenery from a higher view, returning to key knowledge and skills at a deeper level. Each time the train circles, it collects more luggage, new ideas, understanding, skills, and knowledge. Knowledge and understanding that builds over 2 years. Now, already in our presentation, there was a lot of parents very concerned, and I do understand. We've had some fantastic questions that hopefully I'm addressing and answering. It's that my child may switch off if they're learning something in the next year. Now, we do a lot of repeated learning anyway, and believe me, children do love revisiting things, but it's how you revisit them. So if in year one you were learning about Victorian transport, then in year two you learn exactly the same, you will switch off. Some children will like it because it's familiar. There's that learning to build on. So there is that advantage, but we do have to see this as a spiral, and we're seeing things. If we get to the top of the mountain, we've got the same landscape, we've got the same learning, but you've got a wider, clearer, more connected view on that learning. And so seeing how learning links together across subjects and years, it's very crucial to have that, because if a child excels in this, then we get into that star at the top and they've got a deep understanding, they've got a mastery, they've got a readiness for the next stage of their learning going into the next key stage. I'll explain more of that when I get onto the planning, but I feel we really need to understand that spiraling is a very effective way because we do it already. We have sticky knowledge, we have revisiting flashbacks. It's that reducing the cognitive load, it's giving children confidence in what they're learning and not learning too many new concepts, but covering the same objectives so they're getting deeper and deeper into their knowledge. Crucially, you must remember that the learning matches the stage, not age, so the stage of development of your child. If areas of learning need consolidating, then this builds a strong foundation. It's not a bad thing. So even if we have to revisit things, it's much better for your child if they're solid in that stage of learning than being at the top and struggling. So very much a work in progress right now. We're hurtling through. We're making really good progress with this and trying it out with discussion with staff. I will be towards the end of the term doing some piloting with the children as well, making sure they're very excited about the learning and seeing what they're going to learn. And there will be a lot of pastoral development. So before Christmas is another concern, which I totally understand. If your child's going to be in a new class again, new classmates, new teacher, there's got to be a lot of building of relationships. And with Christmas coming up, I've got some really fantastic ideas for that already. That is the main priority for me. The children have to be happy. But in terms of this curriculum building, in terms of the work in progress, we are developing medium-term plans now. Something that I think is going to bridge the gap a lot, and this was positive from the meeting yesterday, and parents did like this in terms of a knowledge organizer. Now, we give out information on curriculum maps on our website already, so if you haven't seen them, go onto the website, you can see exactly what your child's learning. But the knowledge organizer will really specify the different stages, so the surface, the deeper, the adventurer, what vocabulary your child will be using, things like timelines, things that resources, the learning journey of that topic, and just different ways like links to websites and activities you could be doing to make sure your child is strong in that topic and what they're learning. So that'll be coming out with every topic that we teach. And with everything, I thought it'd be really nice to see something that has been developed already to make it real life, because this is where we're going. So I've developed a new planning that we've already started working with the staff about. So we're going to shift to the other history unit in Key Stage 1. Which is London's Burning. It's been called Firefire in year 2, and they've just finished that. And they've really enjoyed it, and yeah, it's an excellent topic. There's so many cross-curricular links in there, and it's very exciting as well. But bring this into a Key Stage 1 topic over 2 years. This is what the first lesson would look like. So lesson 1, as you can see at the top, we've got the surface knowledge, the deeper knowledge, and the adventurer knowledge. These are just guides, and this is crucial again, because I say we don't pigeonhole, but you will generally get the surface knowledge of anything new learning. It'll be year 1, and there'll be consolidation going on. The deeper knowledge, you would tend to, on your second spiral coming round to that expected standard and the deeper knowledge. But like I said, through some AFL, through questioning, then you'll very quickly see that actually there's some year 1s that are ready to move to here as well. The adventurer knowledge is that old, we still have greater depth, but it's how we assess. But greater depth is always that critical figure, reading around the subject, making sure the child is able to link their learning to other things because of that deeper understanding. There's no change there. So every topic will start with an AFL, so assessment for learning. So that's in the form of a flashback. What do we know about London, capital city, busy? There's a king, Big Ben, etc. And then a real big question to start every topic. What was the Great Fire of London? And that will really show that cultural capital, what children will know where London is, what the Great Fire was. To those children actually think, I have no idea. But that's absolutely fine. That's fine, because we're ready to teach them to do that. The whale, once I said, we must have continuity, and this structure is very similar to how we teach now, just the different stages are different. The whale, what am I learning, is to know what London's houses and streets were like in 1666. So as you can see, crucially, even though surface, deeper adventurer knowledge, the learning intention is the same. And that's really crucial, because every child deserves to have the same opportunities to learn at school. The guided learning would normally be all of the children, but there'll be adaptations there. But show London on the map of the UK, show a timeline and place London today on it. So, for example, image of the Shard, and then place London 1666 on it in the image of a Tudor house. Work back through the timeline. So crucially, children must understand that there is a past and what the past means until we get back to 1666, and then displaying 2 images of London 1666 versus 2026 when it'll be taught. And what do the children notice about the houses and streets in particular? With the teacher, list differences, comparisons together as a class. So that sets a really nice scene of setting that learning up. You can see that the tasks are very much linked to surface knowledge. You would have children to match house parts in order to build a Tudor house building. Simple captions can also be used alongside visuals, for example, thatch. So going back to that previous slide that said surface knowledge, very much hands-on concrete learning, that's where we started that. It's still accessing what houses were like, but it's very, very different to what the deeper knowledge children would be doing in that same lesson. So the task for the deeper knowledge, children to place London 1666 on a simple timeline, using the images of 1666 London and modern day London, children to describe and write down what they can see, comparing when appropriate Sorry, spelling mistake there. Narrow streets, wooden houses, thatch, and smoke. So you can see the progression of understanding that there's no point doing this if you can't do this. And then more crucial, there's a big leap here for the adventure knowledge. So predominantly it would be year two children, but like I said, we're not pigeonholing. But the task would be to pose two very open questions for discussion. Why was London built this way? If a fire broke out, what would happen? Why? What are the problems? Now, when I go back to what Ofsted said, we were doing this fantastically well. The surface knowledge, the deeper knowledge, children were learning as deep as they should be, but just to excel in our curriculum, we have to go that little bit deeper by narrowing what we're doing. And we've always tried to get that adventure and knowledge discussions going, but we've never really had time to do it. So now it's specifically planned. That will be addressed within our quality first teaching. That's really exciting for the children. Alongside that, you've got what we hope the children to achieve. This will be a successful lesson. So in the surface knowledge, going back to the Tudor housing and matching, to be able to match the properties of a Tudor house and describe what they notice. So once again, they're going back to the well and they are meeting that well because they're talking about housing in 1666. And naturally, they'll be saying that's different to my house. They'll see the similarities and differences there. And we've got some key vocabulary as well, like London and house. There'll be others there. That's just an example. The deeper knowledge, so success criteria to be able to describe the differences of London in 1666 using correct terminology. So they'll be moving on to sentence writing, paragraph writing, and so on. So whatever standard there, that's the deeper knowledge that we want to see coming through. The adventurer knowledge, that greater depth, so success criteria to write a paragraph explaining how and why London was at risk of a major fire in 1666. And that's quite high end. That's really deep learning, and that's looking at cause and effect, prevention, impact of what's happening. When the children have gone through these tasks, then it's very important we reflect together as well. And so reflecting together is done usually as a class, and it'll be including key questioning, which will be planned. And actually, a lot of those will be on the knowledge organisers I was talking about. And we can bring in some of that adventure knowledge to really interest the children moving forward. So it's good to have a visual. A lot of these reflecting together will have visuals because I can imagine after all of that hard work, you want to just sit down and reflect as well. So there's a nice video there. London's greatest disasters, a 1666 fire that changed everything. Only watching it up to the first minute because that's where you see the houses, you see the streets, you see the people, you see the baker, but you just start to see the fire. So it leaves you on a cliffhanger. But then we can ask questions of the children. Once again, it's that AFL. How have we been successful in this lesson? So what were houses, buildings made out of? What were the streets and living conditions like? Now, both of those surface knowledge, deeper knowledge children should be able to show that they've got the grasp that understanding at that stage. If there was a fire, why would this be bad? Incorporate greater depth discussion. So that is your adventure and knowledge. So here, there's another thing about the more able children being able to convey their learning, to express and critically describe and explain what they've been learning. And that's a skill in English as well. We've got to remember a big English skill is to be able to speak and listen. So that speaking of delivering your understanding is very difficult. So more opportunities for that. That's what we said about leadership. And actually, the other children picking up on that in terms of role modeling and listening to other children and their learning is developmental as well. Now, it says core present findings because this is something that's only been developed late last night, and today because Friday, because from following the parental meeting, there was a lot of discussion about that spiral. If we come back again, so I'm going to take a child who's very skilled in history on this. So I'm going to take the top sort of example I can in terms of a child learning about the Great Fire of London. Their family lived in London. They've done all of the tours of London. They've been to a museum that's seen it all already. And that child has got such an interest in it. They've read books over it for the last couple of years. So in terms of cultural capital, that child's ready to really build. And they've had a year of it, of a spiral curriculum. They've showed that adventure and knowledge. I know that I can explain why London was at risk. Okay. So the worries we had there's a lot of parents who are really happy with the surface knowledge. They think, right, so in the past, I felt my child has been left behind a little bit. So that really strengthens that. But the other end of the scale is that, so when we come around the spiral again, are they going to switch off? Are they going to build, oh, it's this again? I know about this. I've explained it. So if you're digging deeper, I thought it'd be really interesting to have a core, Earth's core in the middle, a core challenge. For them, no matter matter what their cultural capital is or their understanding, will go, right, I remember everything straight away, because I can't. You do, I'm very knowledgeable in lots of things, but I need that right reminder. What am I learning again? Let me just show you that, let's present it. But they will have that really strong foundation to move forward. So every single lesson will have a core challenge as well. And this is really exciting because we've never really done this as a plan before. It's always been the digging deeper. We've had digging deeper challenges. The children loved them. You would have seen the child come home with digging deeper stickers and effort marks, so on. This will build onto that. So the core challenge here, so I do say the second spiral only, because you've got to have that teaching, no matter how much you think you know about something. That teaching, that progression needs to be in place, and that real confidence with no gaps in learning needs to be in place. But on that second spiral of looking at Tudor houses and streets, this is the challenge. So you are a time traveller. So straight away, it's a hook. The hook to learning is so important. You're a time traveller who have just arrived in London, September 1666. The city is in ruins after the Great Fire. The king, who's a teacher or queen, needs your help. You must use what you know about London's houses and streets. You have to know about how London's houses and streets were built before the fire to design a new, safer city. So you're almost preventing the Great Fire of London. Now, that in itself is exciting. It's very collaborative. We would make that work into having a core challenge table. So even if a child comes around again, they're going, it's a Great Fire of London, I know about this. That now gives them that, all right, okay, I have to look at this from a different viewpoint. And the core challenge will often do that. So it would present something that hasn't happened. You've got to really use your knowledge to think, right, if the fire didn't happen, and I get it just in time, how would I stop it through planning that city? And that's a really good thing. And that could be in everything. So in terms of in science, we talk about the habitats of a polar bear, and we talk about the main learning is always, what are the habitats of a polar bear? How do they survive there? But with the core challenge, that would look very much like a polar bear being put into the desert. What's going to happen? So you have to have all that knowledge of habitats and survival instincts and food chains to actually then look at and weather and conditions. You'd have to then use all of that to realise very quickly that the polar bear's in trouble. So it's that critical thinking that we are really trying to pull out from the children's learning. Like I said, is a very exciting part of this new curriculum. So that's where we've got to. I am offering another question and answer session that will be coming up, so you will hear about that. I hope that's helped. It is in development now. It will be ready for January, but in the meantime, I know there's still concerns about the spiral. There's still concerns about year 1 and 2 working together. There's still concerns about, is my child going to be happy? And believe me, these are all the things that I am working on, and the staff as well. And I will reiterate it. Thank you for listening, and I hope it's useful. Thank you.